Lonesome Loser.
Yeah.
How about that for a song?
Yeah.
And Patty, shout out for that song. I was just listening to it before we started, so that's all I wanted to say about that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a good
Little
song.
Beaver Band?
Little River Band.
Little River Band.
Yeah.
Little Beaver.
Little Beaver. It's
All
good.
right.
It's good stuff.
It is good.
I
I like our music before we start this.
And you know what's awesome? The playlist keeps growing. You know what it is, actually? Where I get my ideas? My dad's TikTok now.
Oh, yeah?
Because he fires out all these old, like Crowded House.
Yeah.
Don't Dream It's Over. My dad did that on Monday. So he's like playing all these old songs, whatever. So then we talk about it away from here a lot, and we just get mentioning old songs, whatever. Yeah. And then so the playlist keeps building. Yeah. Which is cool. Yeah. So wanted to mention two things quick. A bunch of people are emailing me and or messaging me about workout programs, etc. So I'm gonna have one full off season. It's like 16 to 18 weeks. Yeah. It's gonna be. I'm shooting for the first week of March. It'll be up. So for people that are members on the website, I'll send that out as a private email to you guys with like a discount of some sort for it because you're members. So that'll just be a little benefit for you guys. And then for other people, if you want to go join, be a member, you can do that. If you don't, that's fine as well. But program stuff will be up March in terms of off ice stuff. So that's all I wanted to say about that. You can go now.
What do you want me to talk about?
Which part did you want to start with? We got lots of things to start with.
Okay, I'll start with what I liked the other day before I was watching. I had 40 minutes before watching a hockey game, and I flipped on the YouTubes, came across a program called A Football Life, and I've watched a couple of these. I like these kind of documentaries because it gets inside the.
Oh yeah, you were telling me about this.
Yeah,
you were telling me about this.
There's some good ones, and I like to get outside of hockey too sometimes because sometimes we get a perception of what hard work is and what I just like to see different aspects of it because it's the mental toughness. It's all these different things that I love to see. Anyways, it was James Harrison with Pittsburgh Steelers, and Charlie showed me some videos of his workouts before. I didn't really pay too much attention to it before, except for like this guy is like strong, man, like strong. Anyways, if you check some of these out, guys. I watched one on Vince Lombardi too the other day. Real good, different than what I thought he was.
Yep.
Because Vince Lombardi, even though he's he would have been coaching when I was a little kid, I guess. But every time I've read his book, it's very interesting. But I always, for some reason, pictured him as like being really, really, really old, and like all the pictures are black and white, and he just seemed like he was a ghost almost. Yeah. So it was like, but anyways, that one of Vince Lombardi was really good to see his passion of just leadership and how he treated people and all that stuff. But anyways, the James Harrison, unbelievable guy, was from the Pittsburgh area, I believe. So, close to it anyways. Okay. And he's hardcore. So this guy was never drafted. In fact, when he was playing football as a kid, mom didn't want him to, but he finally got on and played high school and never really showed a real huge commitment. And schools were kind of looking, but never really got a scholarship. And then so he just kept playing. Ended up going to Kent State. And the last linebacker from Kent State, I believe, was Jack Lambert, who was a Hall of Famer that played for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he went to Kent State and again never drafted. So he got invited to 4 camps with the Steelers, never made it. So the thing was, they said that he was probably pretty good, but number one, they said he was too small. Actually, he was too small for that position, outside linebacker. So he was just under 5. The guys in the interview, the guys were kind of saying, he's not 6 feet, so he's probably 6 or just pushing it.
Mm-hmm. That's little.
That's small for an outside linebacker.
Sure.
And he was too light, 240, 6 foot, 240. So, but the most important thing is like he had something there, but he couldn't figure out plays. He'd read the plays and he just stopped. So they'll obviously get out of here. Eventually, after I think he was 29 years old. I don't know if that math makes sense, but he was close to 29 years old before he actually made the Steelers.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what the hell did he do from school to
like minor, and then he redshirted practice?
See, I don't understand football at all.
I don't either.
Because it's like, what the hell do you do if you're not playing in the NFL? Yeah. There's the CFL. But outside of the CFL, like I have no idea, zero idea how like the minor system works.
Yeah.
Because there's got to be some kind of minor system.
I think there's a European league that's actually
is it
a league, but I digress.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it.
Digressing is the right word.
But yeah, but to your point, I like that too because you can pull. We talk about this a lot too. Like you can pull bits from other sports and other stories and stuff. Yeah. We were actually having a good conversation with my mom last night, my dad and I, because I don't care about football until the playoffs come.
Yeah.
But this year is a little bit special for no other reason than Matthew Stafford was on the Lions.
Yeah.
And my dad is a big Lions fan, and now he's playing for the Rams.
Yeah.
And they are going to the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. And we were just talking about athletes, and my dad was kind of like playing the sob story for Matt Stafford, how like he was on a shit team for 12 years and never really had any help around or anything like that. Yep. So he was saying that he's super happy that he's in the Super Bowl. He finally has some support around him and whatever. And so my mom was kind of like, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Like, who cares? He makes his $50 million. Like, it doesn't matter, whatever. And it's just interesting to see, like, some people that when they haven't played, it's really hard to relate to those stakes, like what it's like. It has zero to do with the money, man. Especially when you're
it's at
in
a
the elite
point.
Yeah, when you're in the elite of the elite, especially. Yeah. When you're not just trying to scrape to stay there. Yeah. It's like now the money's irrelevant. Yeah. Like if you make $5 million or you make $50 million, it doesn't really actually matter that much, because now you're just focused on you actually want to play and be the best and win and all that kind of stuff. And being in those high pressure situations, it's really awesome, and you can learn a ton from that. That's why it's so great watching sports.
Oh, it's great. So this James Harrison was on the practice squad, and then he got put on special teams. Now, if you get put on special teams, that means you run down the field and car crash, and it's really like if you're out, who cares? We'll get someone else. Mm-hmm. So then he got put into some games, and he actually started giving a shit, more or less. Like, okay, I got it. That's what he said in the thing. He goes, this is my last chance. I better get this right. So he made a commitment to it. Anyways, his workouts are absolutely ridiculous, like so strong. So he's described as the scariest man in the NFL by a lot of people. So 6 foot, under 240, strong as hell, never smiles. But this is the point I wanted to make. So he ended up winning 3 Super Bowls, been to the Pro Bowl several times, ended up playing 16 years. He retired once, and then they begged him to come back, so he came back. Mm-hmm. And one of his famous plays was when he had 5 sacks in a game, stuff like that. But one of the plays in the Super Bowl, they were playing Arizona, and he was, as he got into the plays and stuff, he read something, and outside linebacker is just supposed to attack and just hammer the quarterback, right? Well, he read that I know what this play is going to be, so instead of attacking, he dropped back, ball goes into his hands, runs the length of the field. I think it was 105 yards or 102 yards, touchdown, Super Bowl. Wow. And unbelievable. So that's not my point. Okay. My point is, too small, not heavy enough. Too short, right? Yep. So he found this guy was an animal, and he would sack and hit hard. I mean hard. But what he found he found a way, being a shorter linebacker, how to get under an armpit. So let's say quarterback's on this side, he'd get under this armpit of a guy, and so strong he'd get it and then twist it and then flip around the guy, and guys couldn't defend it. And then get around and then boom.
Sounds like some MMA shit.
Yeah, but my point of that is, and I was going to pull up a whole bunch, this is like just off the top of my head, but my point of that is, like I said last week, is that there's belief, and there's people that will tell you can't. You're too small. You don't understand plays. You talked about how people can change, like their mentality, and he obviously did. Yep. My point of that is that there's always outliers that say, no, I can do it. And what he lacked in size, even though if you walked in this room, you'd think it was a fridge, but what he lacked in size, he made up in strength, speed, hard work, like the traditional way of being a linebacker is going through. Like you have I forget what those moves are, but they're the swimming, I think it's called, where you get under. But he found a way to do it. He found a better way that worked for him and became an all-star. So always remember that, kids and even players, or kids, players and even parents, is that what people say about you doesn't actually matter. You know what I mean?
For sure, man.
It's what's inside that heart and what's inside what you're willing to do. And maybe it doesn't happen today, and maybe it's a long way. But if you actually, it's not easy. But if you actually find a way that works for you, then all of a sudden you have all the fans and everybody thinks you're the greatest thing ever, and there's stories and there's a documentary about how awesome you are. Yep. But if you didn't take that step to say, no, this is what I want and this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift weights harder than anybody else, and I'm going to be mean, and I'm going to be me, and do the thing that he willing to do. Just the willingness to do it. So that's my encouraging piece for players, is that, you know, the guys that get all the hype all the time, they're good. They're just good players. Do they have the heart? You can't. I don't know. Like, do they have the heart of a guy like that? But when we see that in hockey, like a Theo Fleury that was 5'6", and a Braden Point and then Nathan Gerby, who's 5'5", 5'6", playing in the NHL, they're not supposed to, man. You're not supposed to. Yep. You're just not supposed to. You're not good enough. And the will is there, and obviously it's not easy. But that was my point to that, is like, guys, don't let other people define you, and do everything you can to, because if you, at the end of the day, like we talked about roles and stuff like that, you might not be putting pucks in the net all the time, but if you're out there finishing hits and doing turnovers every single shift, you're valuable.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And if you happen to take it to the net and put pucks in the net, even though you're really small, you're valuable. Yep. So, you know, believe in yourself, and you got that one asset that you have, or two assets that you have as a player. Make that the best asset that you can't find it anywhere else, and you give yourself a chance, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That's all I had for that.
No, that's good. I'm going to do a segue here, unless you have another one.
So just a side note to that is, parents, you know, without being raw, is when you see a kid that has the desire and the work, you know, like, what you want to do is bring it out of them. That's the other side, because parents and coaches, it's not pipe dreams. It's never pipe dreams, but it's like, encourage them to do the work, because even if you fail, you've accomplished something. Right?
Yeah, perfect.
So, yeah.
Well, so I was going to say, you're talking about, you know, you can do things that get you noticed and whatever, and keep at it and all that kind of stuff. And one of such qualities is like that. Yeah, I do love that. Is leadership, right? So leadership's a big word. So I wanted to talk about this to start a little bit. We were talking about the topic a bit yesterday, and you were mentioning that kind of both of us are on the same page. As we don't really like the word necessarily, because it's a buzzword. Yeah. It's a kind of buzzword, right? And people use it a lot, how important it is and all this kind of stuff, but no one really ever talks about what it means or how to define it. We were kind of touching on too. And so I wanted to talk about, before we get into that, just like the buzzword thing to begin with, because when you're going through anything, any kind of training or whatever, people will throw like these words out at you, and no one ever really asks, like, what does that mean? And it ends up coming back to like this critical thinking piece again, right? Like when we were in the skating episode, we were talking about people asking you, do you work edges? Yeah. Right. And how it's just like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't know what that means. Right. Or people ask, like, how do I get faster? It's like, well, I don't know. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's not specific enough. Nobody understands what it means. So when it comes to something like leadership, people kind of throw it out there. You take your leadership class in high school, there's a million books about leadership kind of stuff. And so I wanted to talk about that term in particular, and just buzzwords in general a little bit, if you want to just kind of throw your thoughts on that a little bit before I start.
Like leadership?
Or just buzzwords in general. Like, what do you think about it?
Yeah, buzzword. You know, I didn't do my homework on that. I forgot about that.
That's okay.
About buzzwords, but it's what people do. Like, it's you know, work your. He's got good feet. That's another term. It's a buzz term. He's got good feet. Like, what does that actually mean? It's a lot of these times when they use terms, it's a person saying it sounds like they know something, but you start digging it and they don't. As far as leadership goes, this is a big one. And I don't know, like, a lot of times you say he's a natural leader and stuff like that. It's like, well, what does that actually mean? Is he a loud guy in the room? Is that why? Is he happy? Is that why the leadership? And I've read a lot of leadership books, and I got to be honest with you, not a lot of them are very good. And I shouldn't say that. They didn't answer my question, because it was a lot of feel-good stuff. And the book that we're going to go over a little bit today is the best book that I've ever read on leadership.
Same, by far.
By far, because it kind of narrows it down. And it's it's a book on from a Navy SEAL, Jocko Willink. And it's something that I read. I've read that a few times. And anytime someone asks me about leadership, I always say that if you read that book, you don't need to read any other book. It trumps them all, in my opinion.
Yep.
Because there's actions and and the most important thing is personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Right. So so that's what I was. So we were talking about. Do you want to talk about?
Okay. So because I know where you're going to go with it. So first thing I wanted to do is I asked you yesterday, we were talking. I said, how would you define? Like, how do you define leadership?
Yeah.
Like, if I say, give me the definition.
Yeah.
And we had a 4-minute conversation, and it wasn't a definition, right? Because when you think of a definition, you want like a sentence or whatever. And the problem is it's really difficult to define. It's
what did it say in Webster's?
I'm going to read it. So it was it's a very abstract. It's more of a concept, right?
Yes,
it's not
I
really
agree.
in like a process. It's not really just a word.
Right.
So just for shits, while we were talking, I looked up the actual definition because I was like, maybe they have some grand insight on how to define this word. So I looked up leadership. If you type this in on Google, define leadership, this is actually what comes up. Okay. And maybe there's another book that defines it better, but this is what came up.
But it's a dictionary. It's supposed to give you the answer.
Yeah. So leadership, there was 3 definitions that came up. The first one, position or office of a leader.
No shit.
2, capacity or ability to lead.
No shit.
And 3, a group of leaders. So then I was like, okay, you can't use the word to define the word, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, well, let's look up
It's
leader.
like saying, like, what does tall mean? It means like tall.
Yeah. It means like when you're tall. So anyways, I was like, okay, let's go down the rabbit hole. What's the definition of just leader then?
Yeah.
And I got the same shit. So first definition, one that leads or guides.
Yeah.
Second definition, who is in charge or command of others, sort of.
Yeah.
And then the third one, one who heads a political party or organization.
Yeah.
So again, it's like it's not a good there's no good definition of it.
Yeah.
You know, so I wanted to talk to you about, before we get to the book a little bit, I want you to talk about kind of what your philosophy on the leadership is and what you think about it.
I wrote a few things down just so I don't. This is just a guide.
Yeah.
Right. I wrote a few thoughts. I said, so my philosophy on leadership is, I'm going to use this in a hockey sense more than anything. All right. My philosophy is definitely is not the loudest guy in the room. Okay. A lot of people, I think, get fooled by the loud guy. The guy that comes in and says the positive things and is loud and always has something to say. That doesn't mean that you're leading. That just means that you're talking. It's not Mr. Positive all the time, even though Mr. Positive is not a bad thing. But sometimes positive words is not executable action. You know, like, let's go, guys, let's keep working is not actually, like, I mean, it's good. It's better than saying, guys, let's give up and quit and let's just lay down and die. Mm-hmm. But so it's not bad, but it's not necessarily leadership. Anybody can do that, right? So my point of leadership is, talk is cheap. Action is what speaks volumes. And I've got a saying that I've heard several times is like, your actions speak so loudly that I can't even hear what you're saying. And for anybody that says I don't understand what that means, that just simply means like you can talk all day, but if you don't do what you're talking about, all the words mean nothing. So just by you'd be the quietest guy in the room, and if you read your hockey team and you guys are kind of playing like a bucket of vanilla that day, a leader will stand up and without saying a word, go maybe possibly run someone through the boards, give you a big hit, block a shot. They're going to do something actionable that shows that I understand what's going on here, boys. Without, that action is a lot more than saying, come on, guys, someone's got to go and we need some energy, or we need someone to straighten that guy out or whatever. It's just, that's leadership. I see what my team needs. Boom, I do it. And I can change a game that way or change the tone of a game. Mm-hmm. Right. So actions speak loud. Leadership to me, as far as hockey goes, and I would say this in pretty much every aspect too, is it's a saying that I say all the time is leadership is making the people around you better. I don't know if that is really clear to you, but that's really what it is, right? In that instance that we're talking about on the ice and stuff like that, you see your team it needs something, and by doing an actionable thing, you make the guys around you better, right? Yep. You brought something to the team. It's doing whatever it takes to help your team. So this is a really, really tough one, because and I read a book from Lou Holtz, who was a football coach from University of Notre Dame, and you ready for this? The South Carolina Gamecocks. Come on. That's the way they named them.
Come on.
That's what they named them. They're called the Gamecocks. And it looks like a rooster. I don't know why they just call him rooster.
That's someone has to be playing a joke when you make a name like that.
Well, and it's like 100 years old. Like,
Yeah.
like times have changed.
Oh yeah,
The roosters, man.
that's
But anyways,
awesome.
he said that like people do not understand how important it is for that linebacker or that kid that the guy that just blocks or whatever. How those small roles play an important piece. So, is doing whatever it takes to help your team win. So I could be a goal scorer, right? If I'm a goal scorer and I refuse to block a shot, but now I block shots. Obviously, that's something to help my team win. And the other side of it is like, it's the team aspect of things. It's not the individual. And it's very, very hard because your team could be winning. And if you're one of the better players, or if you're second, let's say you play for the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid is number one and Leon Draisaitl, let's say, and you're going for the scoring race. Does Connor McDavid, is he a leader? And I don't know the answer. Is he a leader if Draisaitl is ahead in the scoring race by 3? Is he happy for him?
Right.
Will he actually do things to make him better, or does he go within himself and actually be bitter? And that's the leadership part, is that you're winning hockey games, even though they're not. But I was using that as an example, is like the most important piece of a leader is that you're doing your job, you're doing your mission to help the team get better. And if that means someone else gets more glory, fine, we're winning. Because the thing is that what people don't understand, and like from a parent standpoint, I've seen this every day for years and years and years, is that when everyone's happy for somebody if you're winning and doing well, as long as you're not doing better than my son or better than me. And that mentality's got to go, because a true leader doesn't care. And guys, you'll get your due. People, like, scouts aren't dumb, coaches aren't dumb. They see who's actually there for the right reasons. So it's a very hard concept to see someone do well. So, for example, don't want to beat this one too long. My son could look at some of the other rookies in the league that are, roughly maybe even drafted later, that may have more points, that are friends, right? And he could sit there and pretend to be happy for them, even though they're not his teammates. But hopefully he's genuinely happy that they're doing well, because he's doing well also. So it doesn't have to come at the expenses. I was drafted higher. I should have more points, and I should be better, and I should get more press. Yep. Right? Because your day's going to come if you do the right things over and over. Right? So that one's that. It's being consistently doing the right things. That's another thing of leadership. It's not just when you feel like it. It's consistently. It's being ready and all that stuff. And the most important thing to me is it's the goal of accomplishing the task. And that's what that book talks about too. That book made it very clear. Yep. It's like the only thing that matters is the mission, and whatever it takes to do the mission is what a leader's going to do. Yep. Right? And then also having your teammates trust that you're going to do your job. And then equally as important, if you prepare and you practice and leadership is there, it's also trusting that your teammates are going to do their job. Right? So I know, let's say I'm a D that pinches. We've done this over and over. D pinches. I know that someone's covering no matter what. I know that if I get in a tussle, I know that number 16 and number 19 have my back. I know that for a fact. Like, it's no question. That's leadership. It's just doing what it takes to providing what your team needs. And that might, sometimes in the dressing room, it might be some words, might not be. Off the ice, you're always an example. And it's not because you walk around with, a nice suit and stuff like that. It's you look like God or anything like that. It's just like you're a guy that sticks out like a sore thumb because you do the right things all the time with your team. You treat teammates properly. And this is a big thing. I've seen this team after team where you have someone who is supposed to be the leader, but everything I just talked about, they're the opposite. And I guess that's the best way to say it, is like, yes, they're good players. Yes, they in the papers and all that stuff, it looks like they're leaders. But when it really comes down to it, they're all about themselves. Do you know what I mean? Yep. So that's really, really sort of, you treat your teammates properly. It's having the ability to treat them equally as well. Equally might not be the word, but appropriately. Because you and I may not be best friends on the ice, but as a teammate, and if you walk in with your tail between your legs, and I could just recognize it, it should never be, even if you're better than me, or even if you're equal to me, and it might mean ice time, possibly if you're having a bad day, might benefit me. The bottom line is that we need everybody going on all cylinders. So if I see you kind of drag a tail between your legs, it's got to be, Eric, what's going on, bud? Like, and having a small talk and, get out of it, focus, the words, focus on the mission, you're going to get out of this, right? Mm-hmm. It's also recognize the guys that maybe don't get the love from the coach. It's the guy that's insecure or whatever like that. It's just being there for a teammate. You don't have to have a love fest, but you have to be able to know that he can count on you. That's leadership. It really is. And if you don't give a shit about that guy, then why would he ever give a shit about you or your team? And it's a reflection of your whole team. Treat the depth guy on your team as important as your best player.
Yep.
And honestly, I'm so glad that we watched the Mark Messier and the Wayne Gretzky interviews the other day, because they actually talked about that is like when Dave Lumley or Marty McSorley came in, they were not good players, like top end players, but when they got traded to the Oilers, guys that got traded, the best guys on the team, Gretzky, Messier, Coffey, all these guys would say, hey, just come and live with us low. Come live with us, get yourself sorted. You need a card. What do you need? We'll get you sorted out. And that kind of stuff makes them feel like they're important. If the guys are going out, you're the depth guy and the guys that are new, you're always included. And they always treated the depth guy like they were the best player on the team.
Yep.
If a guy made a mistake, it was not you blew it. Like Steve Smith, the one year in the playoffs, he was a rookie defenseman, and they were making their third run for a cup, and they were playing Calgary. He scored on his own net, and game was over out of the playoffs. And he thought he was like the worst guy ever, and the guys straight up went up to him. And it wasn't his fault. Like he made somewhat of an error. The puck kind of slipped off. Everyone could do it. It just happened to be the wrong time. And they took that time with him, and they said, stop, man, stop. Let's go. Let's move forward. And he ended up being a great player. You're on time. You're representing your team properly. On the ice, do your job the best of your ability. That's period. Just do your job consistently and to the best of your ability. Do everything to complete the mission for your team, to help your team win. That's critical. So that might mean some self-sacrificing for the greater good of the team. Do what your team needs, even if it's not for the glory. Step up and play your role, sometimes but blocking a shot and doing things that are uncharacteristic or very important to your team. Put value on the players who do the dirty work. Staying disciplined over personal, what did I say? Emotions. So this is really important, is when you're having let's say you're a goal scorer and you haven't scored in a few games, and your emotions are starting to get the better from you, and you feel like someone gives you a jab or something like that, and you feel like, screw it, I'm going to stick this guy and take a penalty, so you're not helping your team. It's staying focused on that, and don't let your emotions get out of the way of what the big picture is. And then putting personal agendas aside for the betterment of the team. And it's very hard to do that sometimes, but I know that's a lot.
No, it's good, man.
It's a lot.
I mean,
but at the end of the day, it's about it really is. Like even in working here, right? It's that you know from the bottom of your heart that I don't want to work that treadmill anymore.
Yeah.
Right. That's the last thing. I've done all these jobs. It's not what I want to do anymore. So we have people to do that, but we know that, and vice versa, that if it comes down to it, that Saturday morning, the job needs to get done, you can call me and I will be here, or I'll recognize that and I'll take over, vice versa. Yep. And that's what teamwork is. That's what leadership is. You're never too good to do anything.
That's right.
In fact, last thing, I can go, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
The last thing to me, which I read, which was really neat out of some of the military books, is they say that a lot of the times the generals or the leaders eat last.
Yeah.
And I've always made a point of that with, I told my son, don't not necessarily eat last, but let other people go first. Don't be so self-focused.
I do that all the time too, man. I know. For sure. It's such a good principle, man.
It's just a good principle. Yeah. Like, just go ahead and eat. Like, there'll be more chicken, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very important to do that. And it's not always about eating. It's about, if there's a new batch of sticks come in, or toques for the team, or sweatshirts, just don't be the first guy to go in there and grab yours first. Like, everyone gets one. Calm down. Let a guy that maybe just got on the team, or a guy that doesn't get much, let them have first dibs so they can feel great.
Yeah, for sure. So I got a bunch of stuff on that. So just while you were talking, because for people listening, like, you just said a whole mess of shit. So it's basically it's like leadership is everything, basically, is what is almost what that is. Like, you just went through a bunch of examples, and just while you were talking, I came up with my own definition. So this is
nice.
I think they should replace
write a new book
in Webster's dictionary. This is what they should put if it's not already there.
Okay.
It's doing what it takes to make the team consistently succeed. So that's what I would define leadership as. So doing whatever it takes to make the team consistently succeed. So now succeed doesn't mean win necessarily. Consistently is a big word in there, because if you make the team succeed once, you might be doing things that aren't necessarily beneficial in the long term. And doing whatever it takes, to me, that kind of like, it just encompasses all the examples that you just gave. So whatever it takes could be how you treat people, your example on the ice, your example off the ice, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of, if I had to put it into one sentence, best I could, that's what I just came up with right now. And I think that's a good way to think about it. Do whatever it takes to make the team consistently succeed. If you're doing that, then you're exhibiting leadership for sure. And so that's a really important thing, that especially for kids, if you're trying to, because people always say we need a leader, who's going to be the leader, who's going to step up, like all this stuff. That's a way that you can frame it in just one sentence. And then all those examples you gave are really good things that you guys can follow, because they happen every game, every practice with your team all the time. And one thing I want to highlight that you said is being the boss doesn't automatically make you the leader.
Right.
And that's can go for anything. It could be a hockey team, it could be a business thing, it could be a whatever.
And being the best player doesn't make you the leader.
That's right.
A lot of people assume that.
You're not, and you're not, unless you're doing, you can be. And one of the things you said early on there was that the guy who talks the most isn't always the leader. You can be the leader if you talk the most.
Yeah.
But it's not a given that you're the leader just because you're talking.
You lead.
That's right. So anyone who's been on a team of any kind before, you totally know what's going on. It could happen in your family. It could happen with your spouse or your partner, whatever. And if you don't have somebody, at least one of you, and there can be more than one, but at least one person who's that glue guy, that glue person that can bring everyone together and help work through problems in whatever the setting is, then you're at a big disadvantage as a team if you want to succeed over time. And that can be a company thing, a team thing, or whatever thing, And the other thing is that the willingness to kind of reach out to the people, the example you gave, like in the room where guys, you see a guy's having a bad day or whatever, and even if you don't like the guy, you still, as the leader, need to reach out and try to help this situation, because this person's part of your team.
Yeah.
And I had one example of that. So when I was in my last year of junior, I was going through a problem that was very known. And when I moved there, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anyone. And so I'm dealing with some personal things going on. And the captain of my team, who I didn't know, sent me a text one night. I was by myself at my billets, and I wasn't friends with any of these guys yet. I just moved there. And he just asked me, like, hey man, what's going on? Like, I know you're going through whatever is going on. Like, what's up? Like, are things cool? Like, is everything good? Are you getting through it okay? Like, this kind of stuff. And I was like, holy shit, man. And like, I'm never going to forget that for the rest of my life now.
I know.
And this guy who was on my team, he wasn't the most vocal person. He wasn't the most rah person, but I had way more respect for him as the captain of our team now because he did that.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, this is actually a guy that I think some of the boys can count on. Like we can count on this guy to at least in that domain have a good element of leadership that is worth having, and he's worthy of being called the leader of the team when he's doing stuff like that, So it's that willingness to also reach out across the not across, I don't want to say across the aisle, politically speaking, maybe, but like if it's just a personal situation when it's someone you don't know or someone you aren't friends with or don't even like, they're still on your team, man, and you still need to, you got to bring them together to make the team function properly, So all of that kind of stuff, when you are the leader, it's on you kind of to take ownership of what you're doing in that, in whatever the domain is, because you're the one in control of the team, or at the head of the table or whatever, right? So I want to bleed into the book now.
It's the best book ever.
So this is, like you're saying, there's a book by Jocko. So for people watching, this is the book. It's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, and he wrote it with Leif Babin, who's another Navy SEAL guy. So Jocko's got like a bunch of books out, and he's a pretty rah dude. But what I really like about this book is the way that it's laid out is he points out, or he basically tells a war story. So when they were in Iraq in like 2006 or whatever, he'll tell a story about in battle, on the battlefield, something that happened, or in the planning of going on the battlefield, something that happened. Then he'll extract out a principle from that story, and he'll explain the principle, and then he'll give you a real world, more of a business example of how it could apply to just life. Because what he says a lot is, war and battle is like life on steroids, basically.
Yeah, it's
and
the ultimate.
Yeah, and I think it's sports is a lot like that too. Sports is life
Absolutely.
on steroids, and that's why you can learn so many life lessons from sports.
Yeah.
So the book's called Extreme Ownership, and basically the principle is just as the leader, if you want to be a leader, and this is kind of if I was to say what is the question that this book answers, it's basically how you become a leader. That's what it is. So if you're at all interested in becoming a leader or adopting some principles, it's a really good book to read, and it's not a difficult read at all. It's not like super scientific or whatever. Nope. It's all in pretty plain language. It's not hard to read.
Yeah.
But I just like each chapter is a principle that you can apply to being a leader. Yep. So I want to walk through a couple of them, unless you have any other words you want to say on the book.
No, the book is incredible. Read it a few times. It's and the bottom line is what it says is that you take ownership for everything in your life, even if you think it's not your fault. You have to find a way to see what role you may have played in something that didn't go well or right, and it's really good because it's humble, but it's realistic, right? It's the most realistic book I've read on leadership ever, and I guess that would be that. It's owning your life, but it's like, I'll just say this. I don't know if you're going to go into that, but when you understand the first principle is like, you can't be a leader of a hockey team or your family or anything if you can't lead yourself.
Oh, I was going to talk.
Were you going to talk about that? Yeah. So if you can't, you just can't. Like you can't. Like I can't expect my son to engage into physical activity and be dialed in and do everything properly if I can't expect it. I don't think if I'm not doing it. He looks up to me. He's my son. If he sees dad being lazy and having really bad habits and everything he does, then how would I expect him to follow that? Right? So if you take ownership, or if he sees me making excuses for everything, why did the business not work out? Or why didn't you make the NHL? If it's always excuses, then I'm teaching him how to have excuses. That's not leadership. It's not leadership, because the reason I didn't make the NHL, we can say that I was too small. Well, so was James Harris, as I said earlier. I can say that in today's game, this, or but if I'm being honest, which I was with my son, I explained to him where I failed. And that's ownership. It's like, so you were good enough, Dad. Yes, but no. Yes, but no.
Yeah.
Because I didn't do what it takes at certain times in certain places. And some of it was I just didn't know. But if I really owned my life, I probably would have known. Like, really, that's the truth, right? Why is the business not this, and this? It's because I made mistakes. I made it. Like no one else. It's no one else's fault. Even my partner, when we make a decision, it's like, if you don't really believe in what you're doing, you just let things happen, then it goes that way. So, and like what Jordan Peterson says, right? When people talk about changing the world, you go out there and they should do this. And, all these people are telling on social media, telling how life should work. He says, go back to your room. And if your room's a freaking mess and you can't even control that, you have no business speaking about how other people should live your life, because you can't even take care of yourself.
That's right.
If you can't take care of yourself, you're not taking care of anybody else.
Yeah.
So number one, own your life, take care of yourself. So in hockey terms, I'm sorry for cutting you off, but in hockey terms is whatever type of player you are, be that consistently to 100% the best of your ability every single day. That's your starting point, period.
Yeah.
Own your life.
Yeah, that's good. I'm gonna walk through a couple of these. I just picked out 4 because it's obviously a long book and I can't go through all of it. But I picked out 4 that I really like, and we'll just talk about them a little bit. I'm gonna read just a piece from the principle part of it, and then maybe if it's something that you guys find interesting, then maybe it'll motivate you to go get the book and read it for yourself. But the first principle, like you were just saying, is the concept of extreme ownership.
Okay.
That's principle 1, and it's a really hard thing to do, man, because I've read the book. I try to do it in my own life, and you fail at it constantly because it's so easy to slip off, make an excuse, but it's just you're working towards it. That's it. And that's the point of these principles. It's like you're working towards doing it as much as you can, as consistently as you can, and nobody's perfect. Everyone's going to mess up here and there, but the first one is extreme ownership. So I just want to read a piece from the principle part of it. On any team, in any organization, all responsibility for success and failure rests with the leader. So important. The leader must own everything in his or her world. There is no one else to blame. The leader must acknowledge mistakes and admit failures, take ownership of them, and develop a plan to win. The best leaders don't just take responsibility for their job, they take extreme ownership of everything that impacts their mission. This fundamental core concept enables SEAL leaders to lead high-performing teams in extraordinary circumstances and win. But extreme ownership isn't a principle whose application is limited to the battlefield. This concept is the number one characteristic of any high-performance winning team in any military unit, organization, sports team, or business in any industry. As individuals, we often attribute the success of others to luck or circumstance and make excuses for our own failures and the failures of our team. We blame our own poor performance on bad luck, circumstances beyond our control, or poorly performing subordinates. Anyone but ourselves. Total responsibility for failure is a difficult thing to accept, and taking ownership when things go wrong requires extraordinary humility and courage. But doing just that is an absolute necessity to learning, growing as a leader, and improving a team's performance. So, just from reading that alone, basically you're actually trying to, everything is your fault. Like act, even if you don't think so,
dig deep, man.
Yeah, dig deep and act like everything is your fault. Because when everything is your fault, it does so many beneficial things for you.
So the key is don't pretend it's your fault.
That's right.
Go dig deep. So even like I'm going to use an example where you stepped on the ice and you're back checking and the puck went in. Don't automatically, like you're a -1. Don't automatically think that it's not your fault. Like, what could you have done better? The bottom line, it might not be your fault, but is there something you could have done better?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one example. But
but the key in what you said is don't pretend.
Yeah.
Like you're taking extreme ownership.
Yeah.
Like this is a trap that people can fall into. They can pretend like they're taking extreme ownership, but they're not actually, because at the end of the day, they're thinking, well, this guy's still a jackass and didn't do what he was supposed to do, and now I look bad and blah, blah, blah. And that's not what the point of this is. Yeah. The point is like extreme honesty with yourself in where did you mess up to make this go wrong?
Yeah.
And it'll never be a bad thing if you do that.
No.
Never. And if you can apply that to yourself, it'll help you look at other people with more empathy and sympathy, if you want to use that as a term. And it'll just help you be that person that's a glue guy. So when there's an issue that comes up, you can help work through it because you're not throwing ninja stars at people for something that you think they did, because you're internalizing it. And in one area where I try to do that, just as a simple life example, is if I'm talking to clients and there's some kind of miscommunication where obviously they didn't get the point, right? Yeah. And I feel like I'm a pretty articulate person. I feel like I explained it as well as I could, but there was some mishap along the way and they don't understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I could right away, I could be like, well, you're an idiot. This is what it is. You didn't read the email.
Told you.
Yeah. It's in the previous email. You didn't read it.
Yeah.
XYZ or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's not a helpful strategy, because now this person's going to be like, well, he's a real dick.
Yeah.
Or that's not like the tone of how you talk to people or whatever. But instead of doing that, I always try to default like, oh, that's my fault. Like, my bad for not explaining it clearly enough. Here's what I meant to say or whatever. If you have any other questions, please let me know, kind of thing. Yeah. I always try to default to that so that I'm causing unnecessary conflict with someone who's a client for our business, for example. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's just one easy example of how to do that. And on the ice, it's the same thing. You know, if you were on a 2-on-1 and should have got a backdoor pass and buddy didn't pass to you, like, don't go back to the bench and be like, hey, ass face, I was wide open and you didn't give me the puck.
Yeah.
Just be like, hey man, sorry, I wasn't in like the best position, maybe,
or maybe ask the question.
Yeah. Did you see me? Did you see that I was open back door or whatever? Like, what do you need me to tap? Do you need me to yell? Like, what's going on with that? You know, that's the way you address a problem. It's not just like you did this, you did that, whatever. You know.
Yeah, a really good example that happened this year with Charlie's team is they're starting to get in a good role of playing hockey. Right, so a lot of time, and I'm not saying it was easy, but they were in good role winning some games. So they had a road trip and they played in the Sioux. And they went and they lost. They just had a stinker of a game, right? What's that? Yeah, it was like after the first period, it was like 4-5-0 or whatever, maybe 4-5-1 or whatever. And it was just one of those games, and just is what it is sometimes. So I was expecting a typical coach is never their fault, right? Like, especially old school guys, what happens is they yell and they scream and they start blaming. And part of coaching is saying, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, we need to be better here, right? But the article that was in the Sioux in a Sioux paper was George was in there and he said, well, simply we didn't come out to play, and that's my fault. So that takes a lot of pressure off the kids. He goes, I obviously didn't prepare these guys, and I got out coached today. I will get them ready for tomorrow. And that's like, yeah, he said he got out coached that day. And that may or may not be true, but in his mind, I believe that he actually meant that day, that he wasn't prepared enough for that game. Didn't get his guys prepared, because as a leader, you are the coach of the team and the general manager and all that kind of stuff. It actually is a lot of your responsibility to make sure they're prepared.
You're the leader, man.
You're the leader,
Yeah.
and he took that responsibility, put it on his shoulders, and took it off the kids. Now, I don't know for a fact, but I assume, because he's a very smart and good coach, that he spent time with players and went over things and probably had a pissy, like a little bit of piss to him.
Yeah, I was just gonna say,
which is okay.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't like to lose. But that is great. Now, you can't, now as a player, you can't look at him and say, yeah, but it wasn't my fault, it was yours. You guys, okay, now I have to take responsibility for what I didn't do or what I did, right? So anyways, that's leadership, man.
Yeah,
and he meant it. He wasn't like, yeah, it's my fault, not the kids.
Yeah.
And they started winning a lot.
Yeah. So that leads right into principle number 2, which is check the ego. In the book, it's actually principle number 4, but I'm just going through a couple that I like I said. So chapter 4 is check the ego. So I'm going to read another one from this one. Ego clouds and disrupts everything. The planning process, the ability to take good advice, the ability to accept constructive criticism. It can even stifle someone's sense of self-preservation. Often the most difficult ego to deal with is your own. Everyone has an ego. Ego drives the most successful people in life, in the SEAL teams, in the military, in the business world. They want to win and to be the best. That is good. But when ego clouds our judgment and prevents us from seeing the world as it is, then ego becomes destructive. When personal agendas become more important than the team and the overarching mission success, performance suffers and failure ensues. Many of the disruptive issues that arise within any team can be attributed directly to a problem with ego. Implementing extreme ownership requires checking your ego and operating with a high degree of humility. Admitting mistakes, taking ownership, and developing a plan to overcome challenges are integral to any successful team. Ego can prevent a leader from conducting an honest, realistic assessment of his or her own performance and the performance of the team. So this kind of ties in with what you're just saying with coach there. Real easy to just come out and be like, well, boys weren't ready. Boys weren't ready to play. I don't know what their problem was tonight. Yep. And that's not what leaders do. They go back to the drawing board, and as the leader, it's like, okay, where did I mess this up? When you're the leader. Now, because we talk to kids a lot, right? So if you're the captain of midget minor Windsor team, Connor, I'm not saying that you have to go back to the room and say, okay, where did I screw up our game today? Like, that's not necessarily what I mean. But these are just things that you're trying to work towards as a leader. If you actually have control over what's going on, and when you're a kid, you don't, but it's a good thing to start to practice and to get used to, right? Yeah. Don't go back to the room and be like, boys, like, what the hell, you winger guy, you weren't doing this, or you're not doing this job, or whatever. Like, you go back, you stay humble about it, and this is where, in my opinion, the example can start to come in, right? Leading by example rather than with words. So if you go back to the dressing room and you guys aren't having the best game, you can be like, okay, what did I personally do that period that could have been better? And then you go out and take some action, and your actions will show a difference in that game. So it doesn't necessarily need to be, like Coach George, where you go to the media and say, hey, like, I wasn't ready as the coach today. It's like, that's not always necessary. And we're going to talk about kind of the balancing act of the leadership thing later on. Yeah. But just for kids that are listening, it's not like you need to go correct the plan because you probably didn't make the plan if you were the captain of your minor hockey team. But there are things you can do with your own actions that are important. And the last point that he made there, he was saying that ego can cloud your ability to plan and to bounce back from things and that kind of stuff. And if you being honest, it's so important, man, to be honest with yourself, because you can't hide things from yourself, Yeah. And it's like a thing that happened on the weekend was somebody that I was with on their phone a lot. And it's like noticeable that they're on their phone a lot. And say to them, if you say to this person, like, you're on your phone a lot, shut down. Like, automatic defense, like, don't tell me what to do. You're always on your phone, whatever. And it's like, okay. And maybe there's a better way to address the issue. as the person communicating it
Yeah.
than just say you're on your phone a lot. But as that person, it's like you need to hear the message, man. Like you're on your phone a lot.
Yeah, I can't talk to you.
It's very distracting. You're absent. You're not, and not to mention all this. There's a whole bunch of research on like when you get sucked into the social media trap, things that can happen. So that's just one example of like if you right away find yourself snapping back at someone who's trying to give you constructive criticism, or something like that. And you talk about this all the time, like when your coaches talk to you, like hear the message, not the tone.
Yeah.
It's so important to be able to do that because default position for everyone, us included, everyone's included in this, as you get defensive. You can feel your defensive nature start to pop up inside of you when someone's attacking something that you know is a problem. You know, and you can't hide from yourself, man. Like, you know, when you're doing things you shouldn't be doing. Yeah. And it's just about that humility, being honest and being able to, you know, address those problems for yourself. Yeah.
Another way to look at this, because we can look at just the game or just someone telling you something negative, or not negative, constructive, whatever it is, and taking it the wrong way. But it's also, again, getting back to owning your own life and taking ownership of your career, taking ownership of being the best player that you can be, right? I see kids that will hide from actually doing real work because of ego. So, for an example, there's kids either on the ice or in the gym that when there's a task, or let's say an exercise or a drill, where it's either they're going to be exposed in some way, meaning they're not strong, or they don't move properly, or they'll get tired, or get blown, someone will blow by them. The ego will say, okay, well, remove yourself from that because you don't want to be embarrassed. Right. So what happens now is you become worse instead of better. You don't face the problem. So your ego is telling you to go hide when you should be doing the exact opposite. And one of the best examples that I could think of, I'll go to that in a second. So you know that there's probably parts of your game that need to be worked on, just without anybody telling you. And a part of being a leader is knowing that you need help, that you're not perfect, right? And not having someone tell you, oh, you should work on your shot. You know. So you should work on your shot, or you need to be better in your own zone. Like, you know that there's things you need to work on. So take ownership of that and do it, right? So, and a lot of the times, if you're not the best at something, that hurts your ego, but the only way out is through. So if you do nothing about it, you don't get better. So, best example I can think of, just off the top of my head, I've said it before, Sidney Crosby years ago thought he could be better at face-offs. The best player in the world thought he could be better at face-offs. So what did he do is, like they said, every day for an hour, roughly, he'd work on face-offs. So I'm sure doing face-offs and going against guys on his team, he was still probably pretty good. But if you do 100 face-offs, you're losing some. Losing means you're no good, or you've lost, which hurts your ego. You want to win them all. But he had the ego or the humility to put the ego aside and go do the work. And by doing the work, he got better. And that's leadership. And that's, put the ego aside. You actually accomplish things. Yeah. And it's important in every aspect of the game. And so there's parts of you that need some work. So if you're in the gym, and for me, it was mobility. I was always pretty strong. Pretty strong guy. I worked at being strong, right? Yeah. Always had some natural stuff, but I worked at being strong. But when it came to mobility, and it was like with Dalton, and when you and I and Dalton were working together, we spent a lot of time on mobility. It's actually embarrassing to me. It's embarrassing. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, because I let that part of my thing slide. So the ego right away, because you feel it, is like, what happens is you start getting busy doing something else. Because you don't want to look in the mirror and say, okay, this is what you need to do. Yeah. So, but it takes humility to actually say, hey, Dalton, how do you do this? How do I work on this? And spending some time and then seeing an improvement. Mm-hmm. And there's more, you get a lot more credit. You get a lot more respect for doing something that you're not good at, or would be willing to fight through it and admit, okay, I need work, than it is to avoid it and just do the things that you're good at.
Yes. Well, people will admire when you do that. So here's an interesting little side thing. So when people have a fear of something, the way that you can fix it is by them voluntarily exposing themselves to the thing they're scared of. right? So if you're scared of spiders, for example, if you have to it can't be someone forces you. It's like if you voluntarily go and confront the thing, that's how you can start to get rid of your fear of the thing, right? So in the context of leadership, when people see you doing that, you come back stronger when you do that. You go attack your deficiency. You go attack the thing that you're weak at, and people have a lot of admiration for that. And that's a huge element of leadership too, because you're not just doing the things that you have as strengths. You're like you're talking about, you're willing to put in the work to make your deficiency up to the same level as your strengths or better. So with Crosby, with the face-off thing, he's one of the best face-off guys in the NHL now, probably.
Yeah, but he wanted to be better. Oh yeah, he's great. Yeah.
Now.
Oh god.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the start, he wasn't.
Right.
That's why like, this is a problem. So that's it. That is totally an element of leadership. He's willing to identify and in front of everyone, try to fix this thing instead of just avoiding because you're avoiding it. Everyone else knows you're avoiding it because people can see your deficiencies, man. People know what you're good at and what you're not good at, especially when you're on a team. In hockey, if you have something that you're not good at, everyone knows the thing that you're not good at, right? It's on display every game, the things that you aren't good at.
Yeah.
But that willingness to be able to go and attack it and try to get better at it, that's something that will get you a lot of respect as a leader. And it just shows it's just another element of leadership. That's why I really like that principle, right? You check your ego and you've got to be willing to do the things that will make you better, that you're deficient at, and take responsibility for your part in why things aren't going well. It's very, very difficult
your part.
to do.
That's the key. Those are the key words. Your part.
Yeah.
It's and by the way, you become a very easy target when you're working on your deficiencies for some jokes, especially in a hockey room.
Yeah, that's why people respect it though, right? Because you're putting yourself out there. You're vulnerable.
Yeah. So if you're trying to do the greatest stretch of the world and you do your spine only turns to this side, the boys are laughing and I think like you got steel cables for tendons.
That's right. Yeah.
But they see the ability to work, and then not next day, but after a month or 2 months, all of a sudden you've got a heck of a lot more rotation. All of a sudden, Eric comes out and goes, "Hey, see, you're awesome, bud.
Yeah,
you're getting there. That's good.
That's it, man."
But the beautiful thing about that is everything in life that you can do that with, not just stretching, not just hockey. It's every little part of life
for sure.
So
the next two here goes into what you were talking about before we started, was how it's hard to lead yourself. Mm-hmm. So these next two, the way that he talks about the principle is a bit different than. It's sort of the same, but it's not exactly the way that I want to talk about it. So I want to kind of just touch on how it can be hard to lead yourself and what you can do if you're someone who wants to become a leader. What are some things you can do for yourself? Yep. So like you can say take extreme ownership. You can say, but those are kind of abstract. Yep. Check the ego, kind of abstract. But what are like some concrete things that you can do? So that's why I really like this one. So this is principle. I'm going to call it 3, but I think in the book it's not 3. In the book it's chapter 6. So it's called simple. And when you're trying to make any change, man, it's very, very important to keep it simple. When you're on a team, it's also very important to keep it simple. You want your plan to be simple, easy to follow, easy to execute. You want people to understand what's going on, and simplicity is the key. The more complicated you make things, the more people you're going to lose, especially when you're on a team, and especially the bigger the team gets, right? You want to keep things as simple as possible for your team and for yourself. Yeah. So he talks about it here, what I'm going to read in the context of the team, keeping it simple. And then I want to touch on just keeping it simple for yourself after that. So here's what he says. Simple. This principle isn't limited to the battlefield. In the business world and in life, there are inherent complexities. It is critical to keep plans and communication simple. Following this rule is crucial to the success of any team in any combat, business, or life. So touching on this, one of the other lines he says a little bit later, or a little bit earlier, sorry, he says, when things go wrong, and they inevitably do go wrong, complexity compounds the issues, and it can spiral them out of control into a total disaster. So as a team, that's quite obvious. So when things are complicated and you have a complicated plan and it's difficult to follow, you might be able to pull it off, right? But what happens if something goes wrong? What happens if something doesn't go as you expect, which it never goes as you expect? Then how can your team handle that, right? And it's important that when you're coming up with a plan for your team, or as the captain in the dressing room, right? Like you want to keep messaging simple, right? You want to just keep it simple. And this is where, we were talking about Mr. Positive Guy. You have positive things to say. That's not always a bad thing. It's not always a good thing. Yep. But you want it to be something that actually means something. Yep. So keep your messaging simple, but make it actually mean something when you're talking with your guys, Yep. So if you just say, come on, boys, keep working. It's like, what does that mean? It's like, what specifically are we supposed to do? Yeah. So if you have like a team identity, let's say, you're supposed to be a hardworking team, or a team, you dump the puck and go get it, because some teams like doing that. Were you doing that? It's like, boys, we know the style that we're supposed to be playing. We're not playing this way, and this is the way we need to play.
Yep.
Or the opposite. If you're a team that doesn't dump the puck in, it's like, boys, we keep dumping in the puck. Like, why are we doing that? That's not how we play. Let's get back to how we were supposed to be, or what our team plan is for the game or whatever it is, you know?
Yeah.
That's one thing. And then on a personal level, and the best example I have of this is when people get like nutrition programming or like workout programming. It's like people think they need to jump to the complicated right away. They need to jump to like the hyper detailed whatever. So my cousin, she signed up for a trainer person, and she's I don't even know if she's ever played a sport really.
Okay. Let alone the trainer or your cousin?
My cousin.
Okay.
I don't know if she's ever really played a sport, and she's definitely not very active.
Yeah.
And so she messaged me when this guy sent her plan, and I'm reading through it, and I'm just like, this is way too complicated. Like,
not going to be executable.
Well, and that's exactly what she said to me. She was like, I'm reading this stuff he sent me, and I'm like so lost. I have no idea what these words mean and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, that's such a shame, man, because she can't execute this. Like you're saying, she cannot do this. Yeah. So I was trying to help her talk her through it and dumb it down a bit. Like, okay, out of everything you said here, this is what you need. Out of everything you said here, this is what he's trying to say and whatever. And hopefully that makes it easier to execute. But for yourself, if you're trying to implement a new practice habit or a new nutrition habit or whatever, when you're playing a new workout habit, people like, even on the videos that I'll post about workouts, it's like they'll ask if I'm using a band or something in one of the videos, they'll be like, well, where did you get that band? Do I need that band? Do I have to use that in my workout and whatever? It's like, no. Like, you can keep it way simpler than this. You don't need this. This is just a tool, something you can use, an accessory piece, whatever, right? It's not something that needs to be central to what you're doing. Yeah. So it's important to extract like simple principles out, even for yourself, and just apply simple things that you can actually do and understand. Yeah. Because the more complicated it gets, as soon as there's a barrier, it's so easy to let go. Like, one thing in this program was do early morning cardio, fasted, right? So it's like, okay, what happens if you can't go early? Mm-hmm. Right? What happens if you ate first? Mm-hmm. Did I fail now? Is that bad? Right? So it's just unnecessary detail that doesn't have to be there. You know what I mean? So you can take it.
Well, so that nutrition piece is very funny because my brother-in-law was asking, and he obviously came in here the other day, last week or whatever. Yeah. We talked, and people do expect, like, okay, this is because you got to look at it from their perspective.
Oh yeah,
is when they come in, they're looking at, okay, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And fitness and nutrition, this is something I don't really know. Yeah. Right? It's like, I don't know how the car works. All I know is, and that's all I need to know. Mm-hmm. Every 3 months or 10,000 clicks, go bring it in for an oil change and let them check it out. Yep. Right? And that kind of takes care of everything. So with fitness and nutrition, it's so easy to do exactly that, because you're helping someone, you want to sound smart. And if you're in business, you want to sound like, look at this package I put together. But all I needed to do with my brother-in-law, and this is what I did. I said, okay, start moving. He goes, yeah, but what? Like, I want to go. I said, I know you do. So get on the bike that I gave you and ride that for 2 minutes, and then I'll give you 3 exercises, like legs, shoulders, upper, whatever, and do 3 exercises until you're done. He goes, well, how long should I go? I go, till you're done. It was like, but like, should I like give her? I said, just go till you're done. You'll know when you're done. Yeah. And if it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes. Yeah. Because that's a good start.
That's right.
And the next time you'll do 12 or you won't. Yeah. But in the nutrition, this is what I always say is I go eat some meat and some vegetables and drink some water. Yeah. Do it 3-4 times a day. Yep. If you do that as your base, you're good. You don't need a plan like this. How much meat? Yeah. Actually, it doesn't matter.
That's right.
Eat it 3 times. How many vegetables? As many as you want. Mm-hmm. How much water? Drink water, man. Yeah. And there really isn't anything else. If you can start with that and understand that, like, it doesn't get any better. Yeah. But you start saying, well, you need to have like your macros of this, your this, and like, now you just lost the person. It's so simple. Yeah. Cook some meat, add some veggies. If you don't like meat, eat something else.
Yeah. Well, so just 2 little side things on that. So when people are trying to take on something new, a lot of times, especially when it's fitness, nutrition stuff, they expect it to be that package that my cousin got.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like, this is daunting. Like, this is a lot. Yeah. And I don't know anything about this. Yeah. And it's so unnecessary, right? Yeah. Because you can do exactly what you said. Yeah. Couple principles, start applying them, and you don't have to worry about anything else. And the issue with that is, for some reason, people like the hyper specific, exactly what they need to do. So one example of that I have in the gym is I'll give the guys a number of working sets they need to do, right? And before they get to their working sets, there's a number of sets you need to do to warm up.
Yeah.
And I call them feeder sets, right? How many sets you're doing before you get to your working weight. And it was like a very difficult concept for them to understand that you need to warm up as much as you need, right? So they're like, well, how many warm-up sets do I do? It's like, until you're warm. Like, until you feel like you're ready to go.
Yeah.
Might be 2, might be 5.
Yeah.
You know?
It's okay.
So it's okay. But for some reason, people feel like they need to have that like super specific, tell me exactly what to do, 1, 2, 3. Because I don't know, I feel like there's part of it is a motivator if they think they'll get faster results or whatever, but there's no fast results.
Yeah.
Because if you get the fast results, the likelihood of it not working because you're going to let go of it or whatever, just say, I can't keep up with this, it's not sustainable or whatever the reason is, the likelihood goes up the more complicated you make it off the start.
Mm-hmm.
So if you feel like you have to do these 5 steps and there's no room for error, it's like that's not something that you're going to want to keep doing. So, and this can be anything, like even if you're practicing your shot, like if you aren't someone who ever practices their shot, then you just need to go start shooting pucks.
That's right.
Like it doesn't matter how, it doesn't matter what type, it doesn't matter how long.
No.
It's like you just need to get into the habit of shooting pucks. You just need to take one step.
Get first. 1,000 and now you have a clue what you're doing.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
And then you can start to build, right? Then you can start to build knowledge on top of that. Like I notice when I talk with my Christine about fitness stuff, because she's interested in it. Yeah. The more we talk about things, the more information I can bleed to her when we're talking. Yeah. You know? And then just slowly she starts to learn more and know more. Feeling like she's not giving any more effort than she was the first time, you know? And that's how you can build things that are sustainable. You take incremental steps, but it's like the patience, it's the slow game. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. So the simplifying in hockey, this is why I think it's really important that when I talk about having your 3 to 5 things that you personally do well, it's critical that you actually understand that, so that when things get mentally stressful or you know, it's a loud building and all these things are hitting you or you're down a game or whatever. It's like the things that make you successful are those 3 to 5 things. So as a leader for yourself, you go back to those 3 things all the time. Say, am I doing these 3 to 5 things? If you're doing the 3 to 5 things, guess what? There's not a whole lot more that you can do if you do those the basics well, right? You finish your like whatever they are for you. And then for the team, it's like the simplicity of it is when things get chaotic or whatever, it's everyone does their, you know, you could do your 3 to 5 things well. You do the team system well, which should be it's a very simple stuff, right? And then the feedback that you're giving as a leader is stick to the mission, boys. Like the only thing that matters is like when things go down, when things go sideways, when things are going great, you stick to the mission. Yep. The mission is win the game, and this is how we play, period.
Yeah. Boom.
That's it. It doesn't get any more complicated than that.
Yeah. Well, so you're actually spelling out the next thing. Oh. So this was the last one that I wanted to talk about, and this principle is called prioritize and execute. So this ties in perfect with the keep it simple thing, because things are complicated. You know, even when you have a simple plan, there's a lot of things that you need to do. Even when in just your day, like if you're someone who makes a to-do list, you got a lot of shit you need to do. Yeah. So it's important that you pick which ones are most important, because there's always an order of importance. What is the most important thing? And you focus on that, and you can attack the stuff one at a time, right? So I'm going to just read a quick thing from the principle on this one. Even the most competent leaders can be overwhelmed if they try to tackle multiple problems or a number of tasks simultaneously. The team will likely fail at each of those tasks. Instead, leaders must determine the highest priority task and execute. When overwhelmed, fall back upon this principle, prioritize and execute. A particularly effective means to help prioritize and execute under pressure is to stay at least a step or two ahead of real-time problems. Through careful contingency planning, a leader can anticipate likely challenges that could arise during execution and map out an effective response to those challenges before they happen. That leader and his or her team are far more likely to win. Staying ahead of the curve prevents a leader from being overwhelmed when pressure is applied and enables greater decisiveness. So this, again, he's talking about it from a team perspective, but it also goes into leading yourself again, right? So you have a bunch of shit you need to do. You have a bunch of shit you need to work on. You have a list of things that you're deficient in. So literally, you can do this. Make a list. Start with number 1. My shot sucks. Okay, that's number 1 on my list. What's number 2? What's number 3? List them out. Start with number 1. How can I start to address my shot? Go shoot pucks. Easy, right? Start doing it. Don't just look at the list or think, worse, not make a list and then just think about it in your head like I have all of these things I need to do, because it's overwhelming. It can be overwhelming, you know? And this is where it comes back to your point before and ties into that leading yourself thing. This is how the Jordan Peterson go clean your room thing. Start doing. The action piece is so important. It's not just the planning. It's not just the saying to yourself, I need to do these things. It's the execution part. You actually need to do that to start chipping away at the things that you need to get done. You know, and that works with your team as well. You have every time you go to practice, your coach is doing this. What do we need to work on? Here's the drills. We're going to do these. Our special teams are pretty good, so we're not going to do that today. We're going to do this instead because this is what we're not as good at. So it's important that you have to have priority. You have to know what things you need to work on from a team perspective and for yourself. And that's a way that you can help to lead yourself, because even my best example of this was with school, like engineering school. The work doesn't end. There's no end to the work. Like, you're not getting to the end of the list. It's an infinite amount. You can just keep studying, right?
Yeah.
So when you have 6 classes and a project, how do you know what you're supposed to do? Like, what are you supposed to do? I don't know. And that's what you always do. It teaches you, it forces you to prioritize and execute. You need to have a list of things that you need to get done. Which is the most important? Well, I have an exam next week. Okay, that's number 1. I need to be ready for that exam. That is more important than the assignment I need to do and the paper I need to write that are due next week also. So I need to be ready for my exam, number 1, get it done.
Yeah.
Number 2, this paper is going to take me 8 hours longer than my assignment that's due. Okay, then I need to give my paper the attention that it needs before I move on to doing the assignment, right? And school is something that forced me and forces a lot of people to figure out how to organize their own brain to get things done, you know? And that's an element of leadership too, because then you're a person that, this guy gets shit done, man. Like, if you have a job or on whatever team you're on, it's like, this is a guy that can just do the job. You know, he can just do the thing that he needs to do. Yeah. So it's a really, really good principle for your team and for yourself.
Yeah. Like at higher levels, if you're not a star yet, a young guy, like, that's actually what I would say to a rookie going in the OHL, right? Is your priority isn't to get 20 goals. Your priority isn't to get on the power play. Your priority isn't to be a captain. It's all those priorities. Those are long-term things. Mm-hmm. Your priority is to make sure that you're getting into the lineup and getting in there. And so that's your number 1 thing. So, I mean, this is more of a specific thing for prioritizing and executing, mm-hmm. right? So I look at a 16, 17-year-old kid coming into the league. First thing is to make it and to stay in the lineup. So that's number 1. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that you're scoring. It means that you're doing the basics really, really well. So prioritizing, okay, what are my basics? What's the team? The team wants me to have this role, and I need to do that well. That's the number 1 thing. Yep. So everything that you do for that first year, basically, is making sure that you're never out of the lineup. That's your number 1 goal. Then once you solidify that, and you have the trust of your coach, your teammates, you're comfortable, you can play, you're not making all kinds of rookie mistakes. Now you can. Priority number 2 is, okay, now I need to, maybe it is get points. Maybe it is be more physical. Maybe it is now, so now you've got your base. Yep. Your base, your foundation is there. Don't ever lose the base, right? The foundation is everything all the time. It's like when I talked about eating the other day, it's your foundation. Level 1 eating will take you to, like, whether you're a bodybuilder and you want to get shredded or whatever, if you can't do the base layer of eating, you will always have poor nutrition. Yep. You have to do it consistently. So as a hockey player, that base level, the foundation, that kind of sets the tone of what type of player you are, because you are, like, you're either really offensive or you're not. You're really, really defensive, you're not. You're really physical or you're not. You're a winger that does this, basically. You make it flawless. Now I can add, maybe it's a move, maybe it's trying something else.
Yep, 100%.
And then now you've got number 2, and then you just keep moving forward. You know.
Yeah, no, that's
like I said. How do you eat a mountain? 1 step at a time.
How do you eat a mountain?
Right. So
that's good.
So that's good. Yeah.
So those are just 4 of the things that are in this book, and like I said, like there's so much other.
I'm going to add
shit
one
in here. Okay.
I'm going to add it because I think
it might be in here.
Well, it is in there.
Is it? Okay, good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's probably the one that I use as much as any other principle, and it's Detaching Yourself. What's the title of that chapter? Anyways, in this book, there's a piece in one of the things, it's called Detaching. And what detaching yourself means, I love it. I think it's called Decentralized Command.
Okay.
Where you are in a situation, hockey game, life, whatever, you're at odds at something. It's being able to pull yourself out of that situation live and look at it from another vantage point, right?
Yep.
Because when you're in the muck and grind and the pressure and all that stuff, you don't see things clearly. So you need another point of view, and sometimes another point of view could be someone else's, which is good, but it's actually taking your brain and moving it and looking at it from a different point of view. So for like the simplest example I could come up with is when I'm driving, I got this from another book, but when I'm driving and this morning when I went and got my coffee, I was going to snap, but because I'm aware of it now, I was going to snap because in the drive-through, guy's on his phone and there's a space of cars and like now we're backing up and stuff like that. So I want to snap and just beat my horn because it's my go-to, which is not a good thing to have. Yeah. But I'm getting control of it, right? Because I've detached myself and realized what a fool you look like by getting upset about nothing.
Yep.
So instead of doing that, I'm sitting there going, this guy, you know. So I detach myself and I go, if I snap, what does that look like? Like, or when I feel like that, I take myself out of my own head and I look and I go, you're an idiot. Yep. So I don't want to look like an idiot, so I don't do that anymore. So it could be your body language on the ice. It could be your leadership in the room. It's whatever. Like when things are tough, detach yourself and just look at it from a different vantage point. And that skill, I'm telling you, has made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally. Same with me. And that's actually a perfect segue because it is in the second book. Oh, it's chapter 12, Focused but Detached. So, because I'm going to end up wrapping on this anyways. So there's a second book, and it's called The Dichotomy of Leadership. Here it is for people watching. And it's after Extreme Ownership. So you read Extreme Ownership first, and this would be the second one. So basically, like I said at the start, Extreme Ownership is kind of if you want to become a leader, here's some principles you can apply. The Dichotomy of Leadership to me is more like once you're the leader, here's some things that you need to consider. So I'm just going to go to the last chapter of Extreme Ownership is actually called The Dichotomy of Leadership. And then that's kind of was the basis for the second book. So I just want to read one piece of this because once you're the leader, there's a balancing act you have to do between in certain situations. That's what dichotomy means, right? So there's times where you're supposed to do seemingly contradictory things. Yeah. Right. So I just want to read a quick piece of the last chapter of Extreme Ownership, and then we'll leave it open. We'll do another episode on the second book later on. But here's what he says. Every leader must walk a fine line. That's what makes leadership so challenging. Just as discipline and freedom are opposing forces that must be balanced, leadership requires finding the equilibrium in the dichotomy of many seemingly contradictory qualities between one extreme and another. The simple recognition of this is one of the most powerful tools a leader has. With this in mind, a leader can more easily balance the opposing forces and lead with maximum effectiveness. So in this principle, there's a bunch of paragraphs where he talks about some of the things you have to balance. I'm just going to list them real quick. So as an example, a leader must lead, but also be ready to follow. A leader must be aggressive, but not overbearing. A leader must be calm, but not robotic. A leader must be confident, but never cocky. Leaders must have a competitive spirit, but also be gracious losers. A leader must be attentive to detail, but not obsessed by them. A leader must be strong, but likewise have endurance, not only physically, but mentally. Leaders must be humble, but not passive, quiet, but not silent. A leader must be close with subordinates, but not too close. A leader must exercise extreme ownership. Finally, a leader has nothing to prove, but everything to prove. So that's kind of how he finishes off in his last chapter. He kind of touches on these things. And everything I just listed, you can see how there's a time and a place for both things, right? So they're opposite things, right?
Well, and the best one to me is you want to lead, but you also have to follow.
That's the best one for sure.
It's so like that one's huge.
It's the most important one, I think, because it brings together all these things. So here's an example that I had when I was playing junior. So I was one of the captains on our team, and our captain was quiet. He was a lead by example type guy, and something I didn't really think about at the time because I didn't really know this kind of stuff. He would never want to say anything in front of the team, but if he did, everybody listened, kind of thing. And on the bench, sometimes, like if we were flat or whatever, he would always bump me and be like, hey, like say something, get the boys going, right? Because he didn't want to be the guy that was talking. But he was a guy that would also, like, he knew when it was time to step up and when it was time to go, like to maybe fall to the back a little bit. So, I mean, an easy example is if at school, like if you're doing a group project, if someone is better than you at something, you need to let them take the lead of that part. Right? You're still the leader if you do that. You know? So, and I remember in... well,
you're making people around you better.
That's it, right? So it's like you're giving... Everyone has certain strengths and weaknesses, right? So your strength isn't always going to be the thing we need right now. Sometimes it's going to be somebody else. You know? And you have to be willing to relinquish the control and let the person who knows more take control of that situation for you, right? And that's a really hard thing to do. That's something that I struggle with a lot, right? Because I'm a super control freak, man. Like I want to know exactly what's going on. I want to be involved in everything. I want to have a hand in everything that we're doing. And when someone comes along that is more competent than me in something, I have a hard time saying like, okay, like you can do that. That's fine. You know, and that's an important thing to be able to do, right? Because then you're not that overbearing.
That's where you're going to find people get burned out. I was like that with my business because I knew what my abilities were as far as the training and stuff goes. And then for me to relinquish any of that to someone else was very, very difficult for me. Even though I would train someone and it was even hard for me to let them go in the fire all by themselves without me giving them, that was good. Okay, let's do this. It took a while. But the problem is if you don't, like if you could lead, but if you have control over everything, then you'll just burn yourself out. You can't do it all well.
It's too complicated.
So you got to be the best leader. You could do everything, but you don't let yourself do anything. You delegate, and so the best leaders will have people doing things for them extremely well. And that's a really good leadership tool. Is that if you can bring the best out of people and let them go on their own and let them lead, right? That's how you get layers and layers of leaders.
And that's actually another one I didn't touch on in the book is Decentralized Command, right? Letting people do things with your support and whatever, but letting them actually lead their own mission, right? They're leading their own thing. That's leadership on you too, you know? So anyways, so this is just an example of something that I think everybody should read, everybody can read. And even if you're not interested in the business examples he gives or the combat battles he gives, just the principles itself, if you even just read that part of the book, it's worth it. Just that even alone,
I'll tell you what, man. You read that book, you don't have to go very deep. You can probably go the first chapter and understand the principle of owning your life, taking responsibility for your life, and responsibility for your actions without the excuses. When you actually understand that, realize how to look at life and how to take not necessarily blame but responsibility. It's worth the $25.
Yeah, seriously. And I think the last one, so I'll leave with just my definition again that I gave at the start or closer to the start. So leadership is doing what it takes to make the team consistently succeed. So whatever you're doing, whatever sport you play, wherever your job is, whatever, you're trying to make the team consistently succeed. And figure out the what it takes part. Like you need to figure out what that is to make your team succeed. But once you do that, like that's something that you'll never go wrong on your team if you're doing that. So
I like it.
All right, man. We'll leave it there.
All right.
Bye, everyone.